everyone to another Stone Building Solutions webinar. We're really excited about our panelists today and the topic. It is Condo 4.0. Are we at 4.0, Travis? And
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Was the winner. And today we're going to dive into the topics. But before we do that, I want to introduce our panelists. And Travis, you want to introduce yourself first?
Thanks, Sarah. Yep. And good to see you again, Michael, as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Travis Moore, a lobbyist on community association issues. Our firm handles a whole lot of different things, but primarily one of our silo areas that we're mainly involved in is community association. So happy to be here.
And Michael Bender, please introduce yourself.
Tara, I want to first thank you and Stone Building for offering this program and inviting me to join. I'm Mike Bender with K. Bender Rembaum. We are a community association law firm with offices throughout the state. We have an office in Tampa area. We have one in Orlando, Palm Beach Gardens, main office out of Pompano Beach. We also do have offices in Miami by appointment. So we are full service lawyers who represent community associations. And kbrlegal.com is where you can go to get more info on us, as well as reach out if you'd like a free consultation. I echo, Tara, what you said about Travis. Travis, you are very humble, but you are a rock star in the Tallahassee world. And we definitely appreciate your assistance and guidance. And also, it's an opportunity for Tara and I, because Tara and I have our we're very involved as well in the legislative side, but Travis has behind the scenes stuff. And so that helps us when we're trying to offer this information, this education, to get a little bit of, perhaps background stuff if and when necessary.
And my name, if everyone doesn't know me, I am Tara Stone, one of the founders of Stone Building Solutions. We're very proud. It's our 5th year running for Diamond Award winning for building services. We're a full service engineering firm that's a little bit different because of our perspective. We also do property damage claims, reserves, and insurance valuation appraisals. So when we look at your community, we're looking at the full picture, not just from an engineering lens. And we're going to talk about all those different influences today as we go through the presentation. The number one thing that I think everyone's interested in, because they're calling the CAMs to the table. They're saying, hey, you're a little bit here responsible for what your boards are doing. And it's a scary thing when we first hear that. So we're going to kind of uncover what vulnerabilities you have, but also how you can use that to maybe get your boards to get on board with what you need. So there is a required contract clause, and it says that the community association manager shall abide by all professional standards and record keeping pursuant to Part 8 of Florida Chapter 438. Now, it's mandatory and it has to be in there, but that doesn't sound like too big of a deal. Of course, I'm following the rules, right? But what the situation is it raises the bar a little bit harder, because it says that you have a duty to refuse illegal acts and make sure that you're following the direction of the board for the milestone and SIRS. Travis, you want to give some kind of behind the scenes information on how this came to be?
Sure. So over the last few years, we've dealt with, in the community association world, managers, board members, residents included, have dealt with issues. Surfside was certainly a physical calamity, and dealt with now the physical collapse. Then we had the whole issue at the hammocks, which was a large HOA, second largest HOA in the state, one of the largest in the country, where there was management was essentially stealing millions of dollars. And then last summer we started seeing there were images of managers getting taken out of buildings in handcuffs, etc. There was a whole there's all this fraud going on from a management standpoint. And so the governor, through DBPR, who regulates and it holds the license requirements for CAMs, came out with a huge proposal. It was when I saw it, the draft, it was several hundred pages. Some of the things that seemed, as Tara said, just seemed the most obvious, and the things that are common sense were included in this bill. So to Michael's point, the way a bill is constructed, you hit it, it's a numeric order. So the first thing that we see is this first stuff dealing with chapter 468, which is the management section. And so because it's for managers, it doesn't matter if it's 718 condo, 719 co-op, 720 HOA. It will impact managers as regardless of the type of community they're managing.
Association firm may not knowingly perform any act directed by the community association if such an act violates any state or federal law. Okay, so that's great because now as a manager, you can turn around and says, listen, it's the law. I'm not allowed to do this, what you guys are telling me. But then it says the community manager must follow the milestone and SIRS as directed by the board. So what happens if there's conflict between these two parts of the bill? One part it says we have to follow law, and the other part says that we have to follow the board.
The one is kind of the if a board is asking you to do things that are illegal. The other is if they're telling you to not do something that you have to do. So you have to do the milestone inspections. You have to and in a lot of cases, a lot of these managers, quite frankly, boards were saying, well, we did it. We did the things that we were supposed to do. It's now the manager's the responsibility to make sure that yes, if you're told to do something that as a manager is illegal and the board says we don't care, we want you to do it, not to do it. Even though in the other side, it's the direction of the board. If the board has directed you, hey, you're supposed to be doing something and you don't do it, then that's also your fault for and your license for failing to act on something that you were supposed to do on their behalf.
This is actually a good thing. I know it's a scary thing, but most of the time it's not boards telling you to do something, it's boards not wanting to do something, right? So now you actually can say, listen, there are penalties for me, which we're going to get to, that if I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing and follow the law and advise you the right way. Associations that we've been working with that with this new law and being able to point it out and show it to their boards, they've been able to get momentum and movement that was a little bit probably slower than it should be before the law came into effect on July 1st. CAM's going to have their login, and then management firms are now required to have all of the CAMs that work with them listed on the website. It's going to be a big undertaking for management companies, but once they do it, it will be no problem at all. You have 30 days. This is what CAMs you need to know. If you move or you change, if you're on site, you have to list that specifically. If your portfolio, you do not, and you have 30 days to make the change. Big part is the conflict of interest. And there was some behind the scenes information on that too. Travis, you want to kind of quickly summarize that?
Last year, the legislature had passed conflicts of interest language where they basically just took the same conflict of interest language for boards, tried to just move it over into 468. And then there was some, obviously it didn't work in some places because, board members aren't paid a fee, whereas management companies are paid. So there needed to be some tweaking as it relates to, okay, getting paid a professional management fee is not considered, any kind of, that's not a problem. The conflict of interest, it's very clear as to how it needs to be disclosed. It has to be disclosed every year in every contract.
Bottom line, if it's over $2,500, if there's any kind of way that you or a relative earning money off something that a board does, it's okay. You might be giving them a better deal. It might be a benefit to the board. You just really need to disclose it. And if you don't, and the board finds out, they can cancel it at any time without termination fees.
And that 25 again is for non-CAM related activities. It's for other things.
When we have a lot of these town halls, you guys wouldn't believe, people just line up, and most of the complaints are all about disclosure, the members wanting information, feeling they can't get it. So you see a lot of different transparency. So I think this is a small threshold for them to ask for. It just says one meeting, any meeting, just be there in person so that people want to see you and talk to you. They have an opportunity to do it. What happens if a CAM violates the law? Possible DBPR disciplinary action, fines up to $5,000 per violation, probation, there's civil liability. Even if you have malpractice, it's a lot of them say that there's no protecting if you're doing illegal things, contract termination, and then obviously the biggest one is damaging your reputation. And I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this so that you can turn around and use this to tell your board. So as a manager, if you're having a board that doesn't want to, or maybe a little bit slow in making decisions because they can be painful and they can be tough, and they're dragging their feet on doing some things that they need to be doing, and it puts you at risk of any violation, now you can say, hey guys, this is a serious consequence of it. If the management company also owns a landscape company, I'm just picking something out of thin air, and they put it in the contract, do they then still have to disclose it on the paperwork that they get and on the meeting notes?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I would say that they would not be required to seek alternative bids under the subsection 2, but subsection 3 says that if there's any action that would be any activity that would be a conflict of interest as described in subsection 1, which applies across the board, then the notice for the meeting at which the proposed activity will be considered by the board must include a description of the proposed activity,
Right.
disclose the possible conflict of interest, and include a copy of all contracts and transactional documents related to the proposed activity. That's the new language they added.
For any.
Great question, Tara, but to clarify for everyone, the dollar limitation and the disclosure in your contract of a conflict, that's about disclosing, that's about the need to get bids. If there's a perceived conflict at all, the meeting notice requirements kick in.
And that's good because management companies might be at an association for decades, right? And they have the contract and the boards aren't always looking at it when the board changes. So management companies, if you have interest in something else, if it's over $2,500, you have to get other bids. If it's under $2,500, you still must disclose it in the meeting minutes.
If as of January 1st, 2026, if you are a association, again, condo, 25 units or more, you need a statutorily compliant website. The condominium statute, if you comply with the website requirements, if you get all your official records up on the website that are required, then and an owner makes a request to inspect official records, you can direct them to the website and you will be in compliance.
Board and membership meeting requirements. This is pretty important. Most of this involved video conferencing because Zoom came in 2020 and now we're getting all the laws on it in 2025. So board meetings can be held via platform like Zooms and Microsoft Teams, just like we're on today. However, now there's you see guys right here, number 2 in bold, all virtual meetings must be recorded and maintained for at least 1 year. Plus, you must have a physical place where people can go. It needs to have a Zoom link and a call-in. So your meeting notice, you need to give them all the options. You need to give them a call-in, you need to give them a Zoom link, and you need to give them somewhere they can go, and it's got to be within 15 miles of the property.
Is only to the condominium. It's not the cooperative. It's not the HOA. So I want to highlight that. As long as 20% of the eligible membership votes. Okay, as long as 20% of the eligible membership votes, it doesn't matter whether you establish quorum at your membership meeting or not. You still conduct the election. Every meeting, board or membership must be hybrid.
It can be hybrid, not must be, right?
Right, I'm sorry, you're right. It can be hybrid. It cannot be virtual only. Thank you, Tara. If a board meeting is a hybrid meeting, meaning there's a physical location, the entire board can be present virtually. There is no requirement at a board meeting that board members have to be in person. If there's a physical location and a virtual, they can all be virtual. The only requirement they added where a quorum of the board must be present physically is at the annual meeting.
Bottom line with everything is that it's 2025, just like you have a website, e-voting is the way that you're going to need to go. They're trying to push people to get there. It hasn't gotten there yet. There's a lot of people that necessarily, let's say, that are maybe influencing votes because they can't get the votes in time, the ballot and everything. They want that to go away. They want things to be transparent.
There's been such a tremendous push out of Tallahassee to minimize, if not eliminate, fraud in the election process. They added all these penalties, civil and criminal penalties, if you're trying to impact an election fraudulently or otherwise. And now they go ahead and put this in, and without until we get further clarification, and even with further clarification, it is concerning to me, and I think many of us, that that this exposes elections just to appearances of impropriety. And I think the number of challenges to elections will significantly go up unless this gets, clarified and corrected quickly.
Just implement e-voting. I mean, and then you can avoid all of this stuff. Legislature for decades has or at least for the last 10 years I know of, has wanted to try. They want people to be able to just vote as you're sitting there by your pool. If 25%, so if you have 100 units, if 26 people of those unit owners say we want electronic voting, then you have to do something.
Why electronic voting versus e-ballots is
correct.
The strong preference is the electronic voting under the statute. You are essentially going to have a third party who has a secured portal. The owner will be communicated to by that electronic voting company. There'll be one designated email address that owner can use to send in one vote. Have a designated email address, and there's no limitation on the number of emails right now an individual can send to that designated email address. So that's very important that we get that rule, that clarifying rule.
Milestone and CSRS, they changed it from 3 stories to 3 stories habitable. So if you got a CSRS and you got a Milestone because your first floor was garages and now you don't need to, it means that you're not required to follow and mandatory fund the CSRS. Remember, the building department has the ultimate authority in anything.
Right.
So something was turned in on the Milestone that says you have to fix it, you're still going to have to fix it.
Correct.
Regardless if you're 2-story, 1-story, 3-story, or 10-story. Repairs, there's 3 ways you can fix them: lines of credit, loans, or special assessments. They just made that in the law that gives you the ability to do that. Governing documents do not specifically say who's responsible. That means the association has to pay out of association responsibilities, no matter who put it up. We did so many milestones before they came out with the form. We submitted our forms. Everything was fine. Now all of a sudden they're coming back and saying, no, we want this new form, even though you did it before. The reason is because now the local building departments are under pressure from the law that says that by the end of the year, they're going to have to turn in all these numbers, like how many passed, how many didn't pass, that they're actually going through. So your phone is going to start to be ringing. They might be asking for things. And the reason is because they're being asked as part of the law. Talked about the pressures from insurance. We talked about the pressures from banking. What we're seeing on our day-to-day activity is now the pressure from the building department to be the ultimate enforcer of the Milestone and making sure that these repairs are done.
Regarding the form, I just do want to mention that this year in the bill, we did put for the CSRS that now DBPR will come up with a uniform form for the CSRS. You're still fine if you already did it the way you did it, but they now going forward will also have a uniform form for the CSRS as well, just like the building commission did for the Milestone.
We're getting a lot of calls saying they've extended the CSRS, and that's really kind of false, because they've extended where you can't get in trouble if you don't have it done yet. You were supposed to have it done by the end of last year. Now you have the end of this year, but they did not extend when it has to be funded by. It still has to be funded by January 1st, 2026, right? And you still need to vote on it in 2025. Or any vote in 2025 must accept the CSRS.
You're doing your budget years now in 2025 for 2026. You are going to have to incorporate fully funded or full funded CSRS reserves. The non-CSRS is proposed as fully funded, but the board has flexibility to still ask the membership for non-CSRS if they want a less than fully fund. But you need a majority of all voting interests to do anything less than fully fund non-CSRS.
You need to have an affidavit in your official records stating that you have completed the CSRS and it's compliant. It doesn't have to be long, a sentence, talk to your legal attorney, but it's part of the official record and will be on your takeaway checklist of things for you guys when you leave this webinar. So there was some changes in the SERS. I'll speak to this. We are doing reserves all around the country, really. So the threshold on all other items, it went to 25,000. It had been on $10,000 for decades. Everything's $10,000. So they bumped it up to 25,000, and it will go up moving forward with inflation. We got
And that's for SERS and non-SERS reserve items.
all other items that are not specifically listed. However, we got calls the day after the law passed that said, oh, we want you to take everything under $25,000 out of our SERS. Take it out. We don't have to put it in anymore. And that's not what it says. You
No.
still need to have all the listed items, all the roofing, all the paint, all the fireproofing, all the electrical, all the paint. But all the other items that could impact the structural integrity of the building over 25,000, that's where the 25,000 comes in play, all other items. So if you have a controller for your fire panel and it's $20,000, it still has to be in your SERS. Pause on the SERS contributions. This is huge, and if it's actually used correctly, it can really help associations, and the legislatures are doing everything they can to help people and to get them over this hump. So what this says is anything between, if your budget before 2028, the end of 2028, so 26, 27, and 28 budgets, that you can pause SERS contributions for up to 2 years if you're actively making repairs on the milestone into the building, or recertification, milestone or recertification. And why?
And you have a majority vote of the unit owners.
And majority vote of the unit owners. The bottom line is you get your recertification or you get your milestone, and it says you have to do work. Concrete restoration done and your roof done and you're making special assessments. It is allowing you to pause your SERS contributions for 2 years, up to 2 years. But at the end of that time, you're required to do an update to make sure it's correct, and then fund your SERS from that point. And the reason is because the SERS report might say, okay, in 2027, you have to allocate this much money towards the concrete, but you're already fixing the concrete because of the milestone. So it's to make things easier to manage and navigate. It's not going to technically save you money, because if you have to do milestone repairs and you have to do recertification repairs, you are spending money. That's the point. But it's making it so that the board can say, we're going to focus on getting all these repairs done, getting a pass, then we're going to restart and re-update our SERS to make sure it's correct. And now these useful lives are going to be extended, and we're going to restart the SERS with the correct numbers.
And that right there is the most important change that was made, as far as the financing and the dealing with this reserve issue and all of that.
Because to your point, Tara, they're still spending money, but you're not getting double hit. You're not having to spend the money to do the repairs and also then fund reserves.
The issue was because they were having to do the milestone and the SERS at the same time, because they did not stagger that. You were an older community, you were doing a milestone and you were basically being told you have millions of dollars worth of repairs to be done. You were doing a SERS and you were being told, oh, those items that you're going to repair, well, we're looking at them now. They have a remaining useful life of a year. So you were having to really ramp up really quickly on the funding side. You didn't have a long period of time to get there. So what this does is it allows you to focus, prioritize on doing the repairs. Then when you do your SERS, let's say in 2027, then your SERS will now say, oh, well, the remaining useful life on that new roof or that painting is now 15 years.
Okay, one exciting thing, they clarified fully funded. The legislature's always meant fully funded, just mean not like the reserve terminology fully funded, not 100%, that just you had enough money when the item came due that you had money in the bank to do it. So they've clarified that a little bit and said that all SERS must include baseline funding. So at Stone Building Solutions, our reserve studies now show multiple things. We show a recommended funding, which is often threshold funding, which is a little bit of a cushion there. A baseline funding is the lowest amount that you can possibly reserve, and it keeps you close to zero. And then if you give us all the correct numbers, we show you your current funding. So you can see what it looks like if you kept on going, if you do it, what we recommend, and then the lowest amount available.
If you are a board that has straight line funding, has had straight line component funding, and you want to now put those all into a pool, you no longer need to go to vote of the membership to do that. So that was a good change. So you can go from pooling to straight line, which I don't know anybody who does, or straight line to pooling without a vote of the membership. That was clarified.
Then this has always been the way it was, but they clarified that as well, that your non-SERS items should not be in your SERS study and they need to be really delineated. We had the lawmakers going to board meetings, pulling up SERS, and it had like their in-ground swimming pool in there and things that weren't related. So it needs to be separate and very clear. At Stone Building Solutions, we give you 2 separate reports, one just for SERS, and then for the traditional reserve study. It has always been the case, right, that it is your responsibility to present a fully funded budget to the board. So we get boards that say, hey, we don't really want to put our clubhouse in there, even though we don't want to put the pool in there. We don't want to put this in there because it's not roof, paint, and asphalt. We don't even want to put it in the study. Mike, can you talk about how that actually relates to the law?
When the board is proposing a budget, the budget is obviously your operating expenses, but then it is also supposed to propose a budget with fully funded reserves. And we're talking now about all condominiums. So if you're a 3-story habitable stories or higher and you have a SERS requirement, it's SERS and non-SERS. If you are 2 stories or less, you still have statutory reserves. So all condominiums still have a reserve requirement, and your proposed budget should incorporate all common elements that the association has an obligation to maintain. If the board then decides this is how we're funding it, it's fully funded, that's the budget, you don't have to go to the membership for any approval for that. Unless in the rare instance your governing documents require membership approval, talk with your attorney. But if the board wants to propose to the membership to less than fully fund, and again, we're talking, forget the pause part, we're just talking generally, SERS reserves cannot be less than fully funded other than this pause requirement. Non-SERS can be less than fully funded if you get a majority vote of the membership.
And again, it goes to transparency. If someone buys a condo, they should know what it takes to live in that condo. What they're trying to do is moving forward, anyone that buys a condo, they know what that condo takes to live in. So yes, you might have no problem waiving your clubhouse renovations, but at some point, things don't last forever. They're going to have to be updated or they're going to have to be replaced. So they just want buyers to know, hey, either if it's 20 years from now in a special assessment, we can keep waiving it. There are costs associated with living here. Mike, do you want to take the budgeting assessment threshold slide?
If the board proposes a budget there where the assessment increases exceed 115% of the prior year, then the board will have to also send out a substitute budget that removes all quote unquote discretionary expenditures. Of course, discretionary expenditures is not a defined term. Get with your management team. Here's the key. If you are proposing a budget and the budget seems to exceed 115% of your prior year, then I would get with your counsel, determine whether the exceptions, the exclusions will lower that below the 115. But if you do have to do a substitute or budget requirement, do know you have to send both out 14 days in advance of the meeting. And then, although the procedure isn't clearly spelled out at all in the statute, suggestion here is that you do a joint meeting notice where there's a special membership meeting to consider this substitute budget, immediately followed by the board budget meeting. So in the event you don't establish even quorum at the membership meeting, which happens often, that meeting is open, that you call open, no quorum, close it, and then open your board budget meeting and the board can adopt its proposed budget.
Financial reporting requirements, it extended from 120 days to 180 days. Official records, this one is really important. Things that you guys need to do, required affidavits that are now part of your official record. A affidavit from a board member saying that they've completed the SERS and it's compliant. You don't have electronic voting and you go through this e-ballot thing, you have to have an affidavit that said you reviewed all the folders, even your spam and junk folder. You can't just look in the inbox. And the affidavit of 14-day notice of mailing. In the financial records, bank statements and accounting ledgers are now part of official records. Obviously, you're still going to redact out sensitive information, right? Remember when this all went down, we were at a big town hall and people were up there just lined up saying, we can't get any banking information. They'll never tell us how much is in the bank. And the manager basically said, well, we can't do that because there's account numbers on there. And Senator Pizzo said, listen, this is 2025. It's ridiculous that homeowners shouldn't know how much is in the bank because people don't want to take 2 seconds and redact out account numbers. And then all of a sudden we saw the change. So transparency is key here. Website accessibility, records must be posted within 30 days when you have the website. Minimum of 12-month history maintained on video meetings. Approved board meetings for the past 12 months need to be online. And
Minutes, yes.
minutes recordings for the 1-year retention. Just to remind, part of your official record, you need to document what board members were physically present at the annual meeting if it was held also by video conference. No additional notes needed on that. And record which board meeting the CAM attended in person. That all becomes part of the official records because they're trackable.
They were trying to get minutes of these meetings because they were saying, you know, look, people are buying these units. And there was discussion for months of the possibility of it. You know, they didn't actually vote on one that we would have known about in a questionnaire, but they were discussing whether or not they were going to do it. And now these people bought, and then lo and behold, boom, they get hit with a special assessment vote. You know, and so anyway, that's all part of that transparency for these potential buyers. Well, Sarasota County came and said, look, we were trying during Helene and Milton to evacuate people and we couldn't. We need a change in condos. We need a change. And that's where this came from.
We're in hurricane season right now. So boards now expressly authorized to order emergency evacuations in response to national disasters. We had, you know, we do property damage claims. It's my background for 30 years now. And I remember after Michael in the Panhandle, they could not get people off of the lounge chairs to put the lounge chairs away because many vacationers.
Right.
So
now it's like, if you do it, our insurance isn't going to pay for you to be here.
Yes, and it basically the liability shield, this is important. If the board issues an evacuation order and the residence refuses to comply, the association is not liable for injuries or damage sustained by that resident. Good thing to do if you have a condo, you can get your CPTED CPTED certification, and that gives you presumptive immunity against third-party liability claims. And not part of 913, but really good strides were made in the Florida grant program for condominiums. It's not open yet, but they're telling us it's going to be soon, right?
Yeah, they're working through the backlog from last year when it opened in November and then had to shut down because of all the
6 hours.
applications.
It was open for 6 hours.
Yeah, 6 hours. Yeah, literally less than a day. So they've worked through the they're working through the backlog, and then hopefully we'll be able to open up. They're operating off the $30 million still.
So the good news on that is that it's no longer 15 miles from the coast. So it's all of Florida. Anyone in Florida, if they open and you get in quick and there's still money available, maybe there's still for you. And it's used for hurricane hardening, up to 175 per association.
And it's for 3 stories and higher. It
stories
is for
and higher.
3 stories. It
doesn't say habitable, but I think it's habitable.
Yeah. And it's, you have to have done your, and if you are SIRS or Milestone required, you have to have done those.
Stone Building Solutions, we're here to offer you all engineering, SIRS, any kind of reserves, insurance evaluation or property damage claim help. Always reach out to us at stonebldg.com. We were very honored to have Michael Bender and Travis Moore here with us today. Their contact information is below. Everybody that registered for this webinar will be receiving literature and information to follow up, because I know we went through a lot of information. And please feel free to reach out to me, Tara at stonebldg.com.
Thank you again, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Bye now.